Rioting and lawlessness spread across London and beyond as riot police struggle to control the violence. Properties and vehicles are burning out of control tonight in several areas of the capital. And clashes between roaming gangs and the police, which began in daylight, continue this evening.
I think this is about sheer criminality. That is what we have seen on the streets. The violence we've seen, the looting we've seen, the thuggery we've seen. This is sheer criminality.
This is the ITV News at 10 with Mark Austin and Nina Hossain.
The Prime Minister has cut short his holiday and is flying back to Britain. And London's most senior police officer is warning the public to stay off the streets in affected areas. There's also trouble tonight in Birmingham. Pressure grows on the police as the partner of the Tottenham man shot dead by officers speaks out.
This is out of control. It's out of control. Innocent people are getting hurt.
Also on the programme, nightmare on Wall Street. Stock markets plummet as President Obama fails to reassure investors.
And crackdown in Syria. Now the country's Arab neighbours say the killing must stop.
Good evening. Violence and looting escalated alarmingly across London this evening. Fires are burning out of control in several areas. There's been widespread looting and running skirmishes with riot police. The Home Secretary has described the violence as sheer criminality. And tonight the Prime Minister is returning home from holiday to deal with the growing chaos. These are live pictures from Croydon in South London tonight, where a number of properties are ablaze, buildings destroyed by fire, and where there have been serious clashes with police. In the first of our reports, our UK editor Keir Simmons reports on a third night of the London riots.
Despite the condemnation and calls for calm, there are fires burning across London tonight. South of the city in Croydon and in Lewisham, and east in Hackney, where so brazen are the rioters that even before night fell, they attacked police cars and looted shops. Attempts to regain control led to further confrontations with police. Missiles and flares were thrown. A lorry was raided for makeshift ammunition to use against riot officers.
This is going to carry on for days, isn't it?
Hundreds have been arrested, many injured. The Home Secretary has cut short her holiday, returning to London, just as the disturbances were beginning again.
I think this is about sheer criminality. That is what we have seen on the streets. The violence we've seen, the looting we've seen, the thuggery we've seen. This is sheer criminality, and let's make no bones about it. And that's why I say that these people will be brought to justice, they will be made to face the consequences of their actions, and I call on all members of local communities to work with the police constructively to help the police to bring these criminals to justice.
The Prime Minister has announced he too will return to London tonight, as police did manage to contain one disturbance in north-east London, but seemed unable to prevent the violence. For a third night, rioters are on the streets of London. They are attacking the shop just up there and grabbing anything they can. They've set light to cars and have been throwing missiles at the police, who have backed away down the street but continue to fight running battles with the rioters.
I do urge now that parents start contacting their children and asking where their children are. There are far too many spectators who are getting in the way of the police operations to tackle criminal thuggery and burglary. And I'm imploring that people within those communities actually start clearing the streets to enable my police officers to deal with the criminality that is occurring in front of them.
There are further reports of clashes and looting in Clapham and Peckham in South London and in Birmingham. The government will hold an emergency COBRA meeting tomorrow morning. Before then, the police and emergency services face a very difficult night. Keir Simmons, ITV News.
Damon Green joins us live from Hackney in northeast London. How serious is it there tonight, Damon?
Well, it's quiet, but the sound of rotor blades overhead tells you this is a standoff rather than a truce. There were rumours all day that this was where the trouble was going to happen in Hackney, that after the trouble in Tottenham and the trouble in Brixton in South London the last 2 days, this is where it was going to happen. The injured a police officer near the town hall was the catalyst for the trouble, where it suddenly became a pitched battle. Hundreds of youths attacking police officers with bottles, with rocks and with fireworks. And when the police managed to disperse them, they promptly moved to a council estate and took over a whole street. It was at that point that repeated charges from riot police only eventually managed to flush them out. As I say, it's quiet now, but the large numbers of youth still present on the street, on every street corner, evidently with nowhere to go, tells you this is going to be a long night.
All right, Damon Green, thank you.
The partner of the Tottenham man whose death sparked the first riots say the protests are out of control. Simone Wilson, the mother of Mark Duggan's 3 children, says there's a lot of anger about the way his death was dealt with by the police. There's also been wider criticism of the Metropolitan Police's response to the violence sweeping the capital. Our crime correspondent John Clement on the police reaction.
Simone Wilson is still in shock, devastated by the death of her partner and horrified at the violence it has unleashed. Mark Duggan was shot dead by police in Tottenham on Thursday, but days later there remain more rumours than facts. For this, Simone has no doubt who she blames.
The police. Definitely the police. My children don't know. Mark's children don't know that he's gone. We can't tell them yet because they're going to be asking questions. We don't have the answers to it.
The claim Mr. Duggan, seen here receiving CPR, was shot after firing at police first is almost certainly untrue. ITV News understands the gun found at the scene is a reactivated blank-firing pistol, incapable of firing the type of bullet which was found lodged in an officer's radio. 48 hours after the shooting, friends held a vigil outside Tottenham police station. Gangs then moved in and began burning and looting their own communities. Much of the anger directed at police follows an alleged lack of leadership in the days after Mark Duggan died. The local borough commander went on holiday and her colleagues appeared unsure how to deal with grieving relatives. And of course, Scotland Yard itself remains leaderless after the resignation of Commissioner Sir Paul Stevenson over phone hacking.
I think the level of escalation in violence that happened on Saturday night were not expected. We needed to then bring in officers from across the capital. That does take time. When we did have the resources there, we needed to protect the fire crews.
Though her grief is personal, Simone shares the public's outrage at what has followed Mark's death.
This is out of control. It's out of control. Innocent people are getting hurt. Children have got no homes.
John Clements reporting there. Our UK editor Keir Simmons joins us now. So Keir, real questions over police tactics over the last few days.
There are, and I think the police once again this year face a real crisis. But this time, as John was saying, they lost their commissioner a few weeks ago. They now have an acting commissioner. And whether or not a lack of leadership is to blame, there are those questions about their tactics. They say that they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. But you have to ask on Saturday night why they didn't realise that there was going to be disturbances and why they didn't intervene. The problem is the psychology of it. Once that happens and there are disturbances like that, then other people see them and they get the idea that it's possible to loot and to cause this kind of violence, and that, if you like, they'll get away with it. And the police now have to tackle that belief. They are trying to by insisting they are arresting a lot of people and they are clamping down and putting more officers on the streets, but so far it doesn't appear to be working.
All right, Keir, thank you very much indeed.
Our correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones is in Birmingham, where there has also been violence tonight. What's happening there now, Lewis?
police at the moment are trying to contain and control groups of people, concentrating mainly on the city centre, the Bullring, the shopping part of Birmingham. Earlier on, groups would run towards a shop, attack it, smash their way in, and seem to be taking whatever they could. When I was there earlier on, we watched people walk away with clothes under their jackets and electronic equipment that was strewn around the streets. They would be taking that away as well. About 100 or a few hundred or so in total. Police say they've made 9 arrests, and they've been telling people to stay away from the city centre, and roads in and out of here have been closed.
Lewis Vaughan-Jones in Birmingham, thank you.
Well, such is the crisis. The Prime Minister is cutting short his holiday in Italy and will return to London overnight. Our political correspondent Lucy Manning is in Westminster. Lucy.
Well, the Prime Minister is getting a military flight at 3 a.m. this morning back from Italy. He'll arrive here in the early hours. He will chair the emergency Cobra meeting, meet with the Home Secretary and the acting Met Police Chief. I think he had no choice but to come back. 3 nights of rioting, the streets out of control, people asking who exactly is in control. And with his Home Secretary Theresa May cutting short her holiday today, the Mayor Boris Johnson announcing that he would return tomorrow, I think it would have been inexplicable for the Prime Minister to have stayed away even longer. There has been some criticism he hadn't come back sooner, and Ed Miliband, the Labour leader, will also return tomorrow. I'm told the Prime Minister's decision was a late one. He saw the pictures this evening, realised it was getting worse and made that decision to come back. There is now pressure from MPs for Parliament to be recalled.
Lucy, thank you very much. Right, all the rest of the day's news still to come, and we'll take a look at tomorrow's front pages. Plus, on the front line on the streets of Mogadishu, the fight to bring aid to those facing famine in the Somali capital.
And tributes for a Second World War heroine, the woman who inspired the film Charlotte Gray, dies aged 98. Hundreds of billions of pounds were wiped off stock markets across the world again today. In New York, the Dow Jones suffered its worst day for 2.5 years after the country's credit rating was cut. It's heightened fears of another recession. Markets here and elsewhere in Europe also slumped. In a moment, the latest live from our correspondents in New York and Brussels. First, Chris Shipp reports on the plunge on Wall Street.
It was another hot day on Wall Street as once again the Dow Jones plummeted deep into the red. It was for traders and investors the first day to react to Friday's historic decision to strip the United States of its AAA credit rating. By the time the stock exchange closed, the Dow had plummeted more than 630 points. Why? Because unlike Britain, unlike France, the US is no longer in the elite group of countries considered to be a risk-free borrower.
We are selling ARIA.
On this trading floor uptown, the most widely followed index of American stocks did not look pretty. And here they know who to blame for the country's downgrade.
If you try and take the correlation from how the U.S. runs its debt versus a household, how it runs its debt, you've got to get your credit cards down, you've got to get your payments down. And I think, it may sound a bit too simplistic, but those folks in Washington really have heard a resounding, get your house in order, so to speak.
In Washington, President Obama was responding to criticisms from the agency which downgraded his nation that the country's political paralysis was in large measure at fault.
Because after witnessing a month of wrangling over raising the debt ceiling, they doubted our political system's ability to act. But this is the United States of America. No matter what some agency may say, we've always been and always will be a AAA country.
But if he heard the appeals for a truce, this Republican nominee for president did not appear to be listening.
The failure of the president to reignite this economy and to get people back to work is one of the reasons we're seeing such high levels of deficit and why the debt continues to grow at an alarming rate. We need to put more Americans back to work.
But there can be no doubt about what the markets made of the downgrade. They're listening to the warnings that without further action on American debt, the country might be downgraded again.
So, Chris, another bad day. Are there real fears of America slipping into a double-dip recession?
Well, Mark, I think the figures speak for themselves. The 630-point drop today was worse than last Thursday. It was the worst since the credit crunch in 2008. And in terms of points lost, it was the 6th worst day in the history of this entire stock exchange. I think what it shows is that having your national credit downgraded, like America's was last Friday, is not meaningless. There are genuine fears here about the effect it will have on consumer confidence in an economy that requires consumers to keep spending money to stop this economy going back into a recession. So a lot of fears here, and I think that's what the market was simply reacting to today. Earlier we were wondering whether they were simply trying to work out whether the American economy was stepped on a sort of soft patch, if you like, or actually jumped into quicksand. I think what is clear is that they're hoping for the former, but they certainly fear the latter.
All right, Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Well, here the FTSE fell more than 100 points for a 4th session in a row, the first time in its history. There were similar drops in markets in Germany and France. Not even the European Central Bank buying government bonds in debt-laden Italy and Spain could stop it. Our Europe correspondent Martin Geisler on the ongoing crisis in the Eurozone.
The headlines are familiar. The slide continues. The news across Europe wasn't good tonight. It rarely is these days, but it wasn't as bad as it might have been. When the markets opened this morning, traders braced themselves. The nightmare many had predicted didn't materialise. Not immediately, at least. Shares rallied early on, buoyed by the European Central Bank's decision to buy up Spanish and Italian bonds. That makes it easier and cheaper for those countries to borrow money. But it was just a multi-million euro sticking plaster, and it only held the wound for a couple of hours. By lunchtime, the markets were quivering again. Share prices were falling. Analysts were not surprised.
The easiest solution for politics is still to have bigger rescue packages. But it's no sustainable solution. We need a solution which targets the economic perspectives, and I see nothing in this regard.
In London, the FTSE fell more than 178 points. The 4th straight day it suffered a triple-digit loss. It's never had a run like that before. Today's drop, almost 3.5%, wiped nearly £50 billion off the value of Britain's biggest companies. And the pain was shared right across Europe. In France, the CAC 40 lost almost 5% of its value, and in Germany, the DAX index fell by a similar amount. There was a significant drop on the Spanish exchange, and in Greece, shares hit their lowest level for 14 years after a 6% slump in prices. There's a growing acceptance now that drastic action could be Europe's only way out of this in the long term.
There are only 2 scenarios possible, let's say, or we take a decisive step towards more integrated economic policy making, let's say towards a single, take finance minister, or we go backwards.
A United States of Europe or the breakup of the single currency. Desperate measures, but these are desperate times. So another dismal day for the European markets. The most optimistic analysis I heard today was from an economist who said, look, it's August, people are on holiday, there's not much liquidity in the markets, governments have their eyes off the ball. This could be just a blip. Things could get back to the way they were a couple of weeks ago before much longer, but it won't be easy. Europe dodged a bullet today, let there be no doubt about that, and it didn't miss by much. This might not have been Black Monday, but it was hard, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday don't look easy either.
OK, Martin Geisler, thank you.
The starving people of Somalia have at last been given some hope tonight. Rebel forces have withdrawn from parts of the capital, Mogadishu, allowing much-needed aid to get through. But as our senior correspondent James Mates reports, there's concern that the authorities still won't be able to cope with the sheer numbers of people needing help.
It's been a long time since there was any good news out of Somalia, but government and other African forces here do seem to have won a clear victory as the Islamic insurgents Al-Shabaab have been driven from the capital. Over the weekend, as the rebels melted away, these Ugandan troops were able simply to drive into positions that they'd fought for months to capture. The city's main stadium has been rebel headquarters and training ground for several years. Now Somalia's defence minister can hold a press conference here, hoping military success can at last improve the humanitarian situation. Is it enough to enable humanitarian aid to get to people in need?
Well, humanitarian aid is getting through, and that's our main goal.
Very little of it here, though, in Mogadishu.
Yes, it's getting better as we speak.
But ironically, a safer Mogadishu could mean more refugees from the famine leaving their land and heading here, only to find that international aid agencies are still thin on the ground with little to offer. It's a problem the country's Prime Minister is well aware of.
A lot of people, especially from famine-affected areas, will come to the capital city.
There could be a flood of refugees
Sure,
here.
of course. We expect that, and we have to be prepared for it. Not only us, the international community should be prepared for that.
The arrival of more international help can't come a moment too soon. Little Mariam Mustafa is only alive because her grandmother got her to some of the very few foreign doctors in Mogadishu. 2.5 years old, but weighing just 9 pounds. Her life was saved by Ugandan army medics.
This child it has died if they have not come.
So without your help, this child
she
will be
die. But it is improvement.
On almost every inch of ground here, others like her wait patiently in the hope of being seen. The demand here, as you can see, is overwhelming. But this clinic only happens 3 days a week, and the only doctors are those who are attached to the Ugandan military. There is only one other foreign medical facility in this city, which means the brutal truth is that most of the desperate refugees who come here are getting no attention at all. Here they do at least have drugs to dispense to people who could otherwise never afford them. But what's troubling the few aid workers in the city is how to persuade others to come somewhere like Mogadishu. What is the prospect of bringing more doctors and nurses and clinics and drugs?
It will depend on the security on the ground. You know, it's not because apparently Al-Shabaab have vacated all their position that security is there. We have to have some time of observation.
It may be too much to hope that anything like enough aid is going to be able to get to these people. Though there can surely be nowhere on earth that needs it more. James Mace, ITV News, Mogadishu.
The Syrian regime is becoming increasingly isolated as its Arab neighbours denounce the brutal crackdown against protesters. Saudi Arabia withdrew its ambassador and demanded an end to the bloodshed, but President Assad's forces are continuing the attacks. Our Middle East correspondent John Ray reports.
Same brutal tactics, only the target has changed. Syrian forces turned their firepower on the eastern city of Deir al-Zor. An assault that began at dawn yesterday and continues even now. Long expected and only briefly halted on this bridge. Locals find their escape blocked. No match for the tanks and troops facing them. Dozens are reported dead. But at last the Arab world has woken up and spoken out. On Saudi TV, a statement from King Abdullah, rarely a friend of reform, demanding Syria stops what he calls its killing machine. The country risks being pulled down into the depths of turmoil, he warns. The Saudis and other Gulf states have withdrawn their ambassadors. The question is, will all this save the rebellious city of Idlib in the north? Perhaps next in the Syrian army's sights. This was a funeral broken up by gunfire over the weekend. Arab leaders fear the violence will descend into civil war. But for all they urge President Assad to take the path of reform, already it might be too late. John Ray, ITV News.
Now back to our top story, the violence and lawlessness spreading across London and beyond. The first troubles started on Saturday in Tottenham in North London. It's an area notorious for the Broadwater farm riots back in 1985. So can the people there explain why we're seeing disorder on such a large scale? Geraint Vincent went to the estate to hear the community view.
Come over and see me, man. Yeah, all right.
People in Tottenham have been coming to see Clarsford Sterling for nearly 30 years. He describes himself as a community worker, somebody who spent his life trying to make sure his area is a safe one. Walking up the high road towards the police tape, he sees some of that work undone.
It's the local people, the Tottenham people, who have to pick up the aftermath. You know, it's their lives that's turned upside down now. You know, and Was this what the frustration was about? You know, and the tension? No, it wasn't. These are opportunists coming in and wrecking the place.
Clarsford runs a football team for boys on the nearby Broadwater Farm estate. He competes for their time with a gang culture, which can make for an intimidating atmosphere if you're walking around with a TV camera.
Am I going to say that everybody's an angel? No. No. But people will look and be suspicious of who you are, this, that and the other, because this is the world that they live in.
And what are the problems that you're facing here? Nobody's got employment.
Unemployment is mad over here.
Broadwater Farm occupies a terrifying place in the history of police-community relations. Following a police raid here in 1985, rioting broke out on the estate and it resulted in the murder of PC Keith Blakelock.
I didn't think I would see another Broadwater Farm situation in my lifetime. You know what I mean? Not as bad as what happened on Saturday. I didn't think I'd ever see that again. Am I surprised? I don't think I'm surprised because, you know, I do know there's been a little bit of needle and tension between the police and especially the young people as regards to around this stop and search thing.
As people sift through the damage done by the rioting, they'll find different reasons for it. But the relationship between the community and the people who police it is an old problem for a new generation. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Tottenham.
Tomorrow's front pages are dominated by the riots. The Telegraph describes it as the rule of the mob. It says London is in lockdown after a third night of rioting. The Guardian calls it the battle for London and says officers were given special powers to stop and search in some boroughs to try to stop the violence. The Independent has the headline Mob Rule and says police and politicians are powerless to act.
And finally tonight, Nancy Wake was a French resistance fighter par excellence. So effective, the Gestapo called her the White Mouse because she was so elusive. She died yesterday, aged 98, but her heroics won't be forgotten. As Emily Morgan reports, they earned her the George Medal and even inspired the film Charlotte Gray.
Nancy Wake lived to tell her extraordinary tale.
I pedalled over 500 miles through enemy lines with no papers at all, no identity card, past the Germans, got in touch with England and got back safely.
A secret agent working in Nazi-occupied France, she avoided capture even with a price on her head. Nancy joined the French resistance in the 1940s, helping prisoners of war escape. She became the Gestapo's most wanted woman, nicknamed the White Mouse. After fleeing to England, she joined the Special Operations Executive.
The SOE was set up by Winston Churchill to sabotage German operations in Europe. 13,000 joined, many of them were bilingual. Their work as spies, coordinating Allied movements, was so dangerous, they were told they only had a 50% chance of survival.
Undeterred, Nancy parachuted back into France to help prepare for the D-Day landings. During an attack on German installations, she killed a sentry guard with her bare hands.
You don't give the enemy a bunch of roses and say, "Excuse me." You kill him before he kills you.
Her bravery earned her 9 medals, and she's been the inspiration for countless spy stories, including the film Charlotte Gray. Nancy Wake was a tough soldier, credited with saving thousands of lives. She was also a woman with exuberant spirit. Emily Morgan, ITV News.
And that is tonight's ITV News at 10.
Coming next, the national weather and the news where you are, but we leave you tonight with live pictures from London. From Nina and from me, good night, and thank you for watching.
Good night.